Welcome to this video about the percents basics. So this video encompasses things like what is a percent, doing percents to decimals and decimals to percents, and fractions to percents as well. And we're also going to take a quick look at percent equations. So first of all, what is a percent? As you can see, I have 40% written here. So 40%, that little sign at the end tells us percent. But per means for each. And cent actually comes from the Latin root for 100. So a percent means something out of 100. So 40% is the same as 40 out of 100. Seems easy enough, right? So anytime you see percent, think 100 as your denominator. So knowing that information, we can now change decimals into percents and percents into decimals. So our first percent to change into decimal is 22.5%. So when we change from percent to decimal, we're actually going to divide by 100. So we take 22.5 divided by 100, which is 0.225. And that's the equivalent decimal for the percent 22.5. If I change decimals to percent, we're now going to take our decimal 3.89 and multiply by 100. So that gives us 389%. Another way to think about this, I use this for my students a lot. Decimal comes before percent in the dictionary. So if I want to change from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to move my decimal place 2 places and then add a percent sign. So 2 places to the right because decimal comes before percent. If I want to change from percent to decimal, I'm going to take my decimal point and I'm going to move it 2 places to the left and eliminate the percent sign. So if this little doodle helps you remember what to do with decimals and percents and change them back and forth, then feel free to use it. Okay, decimals to percent, 2 decimal places because it's 100. We can also change a fraction to a percent, and actually it's quite easy. We first want to change our fraction to a decimal. So we have 2/5. That means 2 divided by 5. Okay, so 2 divided by 5, which is 0.4. So that's our decimal, and then if we use our little doodle, I'm changing from decimal to percent, so 2 places to the right, and add my percent sign. Since I have a blank space, then I want to put a 0 placeholder there. So that's the same as 40%. Okay, so hopefully going back and forth from one form to the other is not difficult for you. If we look at some percent problems, we can look at these 2 ways. We can either write an equation or we can write a percent proportion. They're both pretty similar, but we're going to first write an equation and then we're going to solve it using a percent proportion. So the first one is, what is 10% of 192? Since I don't know what is, that's going to be my variable. So I'm going to use an x. So x is means equals 10%. If I'm writing an equation, I want to change 10% into a decimal. So I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the left and use 0.10. Of means multiply, and I'm going to multiply by 192. So that's how you set it up. So in this case, to find x, I would multiply x to be 0.10 times 192, or it would be 19.2 would be my answer. We can get this same answer by setting up a percent proportion. The theory behind percent proportion is that we have a part to a total. In two cases, we have a percent written as a part to a total, and we have some other relationship that's part to total. And we always see this with the numbers, so is over of is the same as our percent over 100. So our part to total ratios become is over of equals percent over 100. So I can rewrite my first one. Since I know my percent, I'm going to write 10 over 100 because 10% is 10 over 100. And is my what part, and of is my 192. And then to solve a proportion, I cross multiply, so I get 100x equals 10 times 192, or 1,920. And then I'm going to divide by 100. So x equals 19.20, which is exactly what I got before. So you can do this two ways, whichever way you prefer. If I ask, though, for a percent proportion, I want to do the proportion. Let's try the next one as a proportion rather than an equation. So what percent of 250 is 20? So we can kind of separate this into our three pieces. I don't know what percent it is, but I do know that it's out of 100. So I'm going to set up x over 100 equals 20 is with my is, and 250 is my of. So we're going to cross multiply. So I have 250x equals 20 times 100. And if you multiply that out, you get 1,000. Divide both by 250. So you get x equals, now remember, I can cross off zeros because they're now simplified. And if you do 200 divided by 25, $2 gives you 8 quarters. Okay, so it's 8%. So our answer, make sure we have our percent sign for that one. Okay, one last one. 40% of what number is 42? So we have our percent this time. So 40 over 100 equals, we have of what number is 42. We don't know the of part, so that's going to be our x, and 42 is in our numerator. So this time, again, we're going to cross multiply. We have 40x equals 42 times 100, or 40x equals 4200, and divide by 40. So this time, oops, sorry about that, x equals, let's use our calculator, 4,200 divided by 40 gives you 105. So in this case, our total is 105. Hope that helped you figure out how to do percent proportions. Feel free to watch this again to make sure that you know